All right. Hello, everyone. I'm tempted to say good afternoon. I just thought of saying good afternoon, and then I realized we
It's
got
not
people from
afternoon.
watching all. Yeah, people like you, Nicholas. It's not afternoon where you are now.
Definitely not. It's nine
Now
o'clock at
you've
night.
yeah, you've had your time changed, so now you're back to 5 hours ahead, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually,
Nine
I
o'clock,
think I
right?
just. It is, yeah, but I just realized I didn't actually notice the change because whenever you asked me that, I was like, no, not yet. And I looked at my phone and I was like, nope, it's changed.
It doesn't
See, I
matter.
told you I don't know. I don't notice these things.
I always say every week, like you don't sleep, so you know your
Very rarely.
perception of time. It doesn't even matter. You don't. You just go with whatever. Yeah.
I tell you, I honestly think there's some. I think I heard someone say one time, like Donald Trump, like he's got some sort of gene that helps him run on little sleep. If that's true, I think I have it.
Lucky you. Man, that is awesome. I wish I had that gene. I definitely need sleep. And so welcome everyone. As you're coming in here, we are going to continue to talk about the book, The Sin of Empathy. We're going to get to that. But last time we found that, we kind of started talking right away and it takes time for people to come in. So one thing we like to do is just ask everybody, where you're watching from and also
Hmm.
let us know if there's any sound problems. We were having technical difficulties for a while there before we got started.
A
So
lot
that's
of them.
one reason we were a little bit late getting going here. Uh, we don't normally do this on Fridays. We've been doing it on Wednesday. That's my fault. I had a trip that I was taking this week, so I had to reschedule for Friday. So I thought to kind of kick things off here. Um, I see someone says you're looking dapper there. Ah, yeah, Nicholas looking dapper.
It's because I'm in a shirt for once rather than my
Ah,
usual.
yeah, yeah. And so that's Kobe, and he says that he's out in Tennessee. I have watched
Yeah.
Kobe's videos. He does Bible
Yes.
reviews,
Hmm.
and
It would be great
yeah,
to get Kobe on sometime. I'd love to have a.
yes,
He's a good friend of mine, an ex, but I would love to actually get a face to face conversation with him.
yeah. And next week we're going to be having Colton
Yep.
Yarbrough on. Let me see if I can show his channel here
Yeah.
so people can see who we're talking to
And while
next
you're
week.
looking for that, oh, you've already got it. But what a
I'm
lot of people don't
fast.
realize is you're very fast. But back when I was doing my channel, Colton and I were coming up at the same time, and it's so amazing now to see the growth that his channel's had. He's like, what is he now, like 3K subs or something? I think.
Let's see. It says 3,000. Yep,
Yeah.
three
Hmm.
3.01. So he must have like 3,010 subscribers. I don't know, something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So you and him actually started YouTube around the same time.
Pretty much around the same time, and it was always funny because like I don't think, well, I'm fairly sure Colton didn't know about me back then because I wasn't on X, but it was always funny because I was always comparing my growth with his, and we were always like neck and neck. And then just as I was like finishing my channel, like Colton just went woo. So like really, really happy to see that for him, and it'll be great to actually get him on though. So
Hey, it's all relative. I was talking to a pastor today who might come on our channel.
mm,
I won't say who yet because we haven't scheduled it yet, and I don't want to like lock him in before he's agreed. But he sounded
yeah.
like he was down for doing an interview with us, and
Oh, okay.
his channel has 600. I think it's 680,000 subscribers. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to guess and put you on the spot, but I have a few names in mind with that number count, so I'm kind of like, oh, okay.
I might have given it away because who has exactly 680,000
Oh, so
subscribers?
it's exact. Okay,
Well,
right. I'll,
I
I'll
mean,
say nothing.
if I got the number right, I think it's around there.
I'll say
Um,
nothing.
so yeah, so next week's Colton, and then Kobe, he's watching. I got to keep these names straight because all like they both start with
All the C's.
CO. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
Colton, Kobe. Where do you know where Colton is from?
Oh,
I don't
it's
know.
some it's
Oh, you know
somewhere
what?
south.
Yeah, I think he is. I just I looked this up
Do you know who
today.
probably does know is Kobe? So if Kobe, because they're quite friendly. So Kobe, if you know,
Oh,
could you
he's
put
in
it in the chat for
Texas.
us?
I just found it.
Texas.
He's in
There we go.
Dawson, I believe Dawson, Texas. Yeah, and we've got someone here watching from Ukraine, which is awesome.
Oh wow,
Um,
good to see you,
yeah,
Alexander. Good boxing
Alexander.
name.
I've gotten emails from him before, and think he's the guy that we were able to send a Bible to.
Oh,
So this was
nice.
really cool. Yeah, really good to see
Hmm.
you there. And lot of, he's shared with me before just some of the things that they deal with in that part of the world right now. So just a lot
Yeah,
to keep in prayer for them.
yeah.
Yeah. So Kobe again, we also mentioned him. He has a channel, Rural Bible
Rural
Reviews.
Bible. Yep.
So he apparently is in a
Go check them
rural
out.
area
Mm.
in Tennessee.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I'd
And
say
then
it's warm down there at the minute.
he verified that Colton is in Texas. Yeah. So
Texas, yeah, I see
we're
that.
gonna have all these like southern, mid America guys. So that'll be that's coming up. But the guy that I told that I was saying has 680,000 subscribers. He's not from the South. I won't give anything else away though.
I'm just gonna say I'm waiting for you like to just slip up and be like, oh, by the way, it's
I might
Passover.
at some point. All right,
It's not
so
Corey Mather, is it?
Corey.
I think that would be
When he puts things on X, I don't really want to respond to him, but sometimes I'm like, oh man, I can't.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway,
Anyway, Tim, you were away
yes. So
on Wednesday. Tell
I'm
us
gonna
about your
show
trip.
some pictures. I got the book up here, but I'm about to show a picture of my trip. I have about 50 slides that I'll go through here, so this will only take about a
Nice.
half hour. Just kidding.
Well, here
What I'm going to do,
that'll
we're
let more
killing a
people
little
come in.
time while everybody trickles in, but I'm going to show Nicholas, who's in Northern Ireland, picture, and he has to tell us what we're looking at.
I'm not gonna have a clue, folks. So just
Oh,
bear
if you
that in
don't
mind.
know this one, Nicholas, then I will be shocked. All right, here we go.
Okay, Statue of Liberty.
Yes, all right.
One for one.
That was sent to us from Europe. So,
Yeah, the French.
yeah, you got to know what that
Now,
is. Everybody knows what
did you know they're actually they're requesting it back?
that is.
Not actually joking. They sent a letter to the US requesting it
Is
back.
it because of President Trump?
Oh, I can't even remember. It was a couple of weeks ago, but like the letter came out, and like
Is it because
pretty much
did
any
he put
American that
tariffs
I
on the
seen it,
French too?
yeah, any American I seen reply to it, and X was just like, "Yep, it's ours now. You go away."
You can take it. I'm not sure. I mean, getting it here was probably pretty challenging.
Mm,
So I would imagine now, and it's a major tourist attraction. So
yeah,
yeah, I don't think there's any chance we're going to give that back. All right, so that's the Statue of Liberty. I went there. We took a ferry, and so these pictures that I'm showing here are from the water, actually.
yeah. No, correct me if I'm wrong. This is on like its own little island,
Yeah, Liberty Island, and
Liberty Island. Yeah.
so
Okay.
yeah, you can go. We didn't really have time that day, but we could have gone on the island. You can actually currently they have tours going into the pedestal that's at the bottom there, and
Hmm.
even up in it, they have like a crown tour where I think you can go all the way up the statue and look out the crown. For a while, they
From what
weren't.
I've seen in pictures, yeah, I've seen people looking out of like the little windows. I say little windows; they're probably quite massive, but yeah.
Yeah, I think for a while though they weren't allowing that, but it sounds like that is accessible now.
Hmm.
All right, so here's the next one. All right, any idea what that is? The big one in the middle.
No clue.
All right, anybody in the audience? I'll give you just a few seconds here. I don't know how delayed the stream
No,
is, so let me.
I,
If you
no,
know, put it in
my
the.
geography could be completely off. Is it the Empire State Building?
That's a good guess.
But it's not.
I don't have a picture of that
Okay.
here. Ah, okay, Vincent. That he's on the right track. That he's basically right. So he says it's Tower 1
Ah,
of
Vincent.
what?
Oh,
Um, yeah, it's the name specifically of this like a group of buildings. So here's a big hint. I don't see yet anybody putting it. So the big hint is the previous iteration of this building were two twin towers.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the World Trade Center. Yep,
World Trade Center. Okay.
yep, yep. That's Tower 1.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now, did Vincent comment from X there? Because I'm not seeing him in.
yeah.
It's on X,
Actually,
wasn't
I
it?
get
Yeah.
X comments. This is so cool.
There you go.
All right,
Branching out.
we didn't
Now,
know
Vincent's
that actually.
another
That
another good friend of mine on X. So good to see you, Vincent.
yeah, definitely. Great. Yeah. And oh, that reminds me, Vincent was in your space that you did. Nicholas
He was.
hosted a space last weekend, and he's going to be hosting more spaces on X. So that's kind of just like an audio conversation,
You can
right?
do live video as well, but I think I'm going to stick with audio for the moment because it
Hmm.
encourages more people. Because there's not a lot of people on X that want to come on video, so they can come on. They've got their avatars that protects their identity. Then they can come on and speak. So yeah, I'm going to be
All
doing a
those
couple more of
anons
those.
that follow you, right?
All
They
those
can
what?
anons, the
Oh
anonymous
yes,
accounts.
I've got them all.
Yeah, they want to keep their identity hidden.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. This is not a landmark, but I'm just sharing this for fun. We got to do something that you should do if you go to New York City, and that is Broadway
Go see
show.
Aladdin.
Yeah, we saw Aladdin. I mean, obviously not everybody is going to like Aladdin, but that's the one we got tickets for, and they have obviously a lot of different shows. Do you know any other like? Do you know any Broadway shows? Like, are you familiar with any, Nicholas? Again, I'm quizzing Nicholas.
Not off the top of my head, but I
You can't think
guarantee
of
you it's one of those things like if you name a few, I'd be like, oh yeah, we'd have heard of that. Like
like The Sound of
Cats.
Music. Yeah, Cats. There you go.
There we go. That's one.
Yeah, I didn't mean it has to be on Broadway right now. I just mean
Yeah.
like shows like The Sound of Music. You've
Now,
heard of that.
now I have now Aladdin. What would you give it out of 5 stars?
Well, I would say it really depends on you know your taste and like the audience you're thinking because it is very much how the movie is for kids.
Yeah.
So this is very much geared toward a younger audience, which I like. It's going to be clean and pretty much clean, and then
Well,
pretty.
you say it's pretty much for kids, but like I grew up on Aladdin, so for me it's probably quite nostalgic to go back and watch it. So
That's
it's
true.
for us adult kids too.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. So my daughter really liked it, and it's the first time she got to see a show on Broadway, and she's
Mhm.
she's in a musical this year at her school.
Oh well.
So it was cool for her to see professional actors.
Hmm.
She's actually in The Sound of Music this spring. So really cool to. Oh yeah, Vincent's got a Fiddler on the Roof. Good. All right.
There we go.
So far,
See, that's one
Vincent,
I've
you're
heard of as well.
yeah, Vincent so far is getting all the questions right.
Hmm.
He's I bet he's a trivia guy. I bet he likes trivia.
Yeah, he's quite knowledgeable. He interacts a lot in X.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've bored everybody enough with my slides of my trip, and again, my apologies for changing the schedule this week. And I do really appreciate everybody joining us today, and also Nicholas, your flexibility. I really appreciate it. Um, so
It's all in my evenings, so it works well.
yeah. Well, and again, the fact that you don't sleep gives
True.
gives you more time than most of us.
Hmm. I have been accused of being a vampire before, so
Did Dracula was that written originally in Ireland?
No, but funny enough, the more modern adaptation was filmed like literally 5 minutes outside my hometown.
Oh wow.
Yep.
Okay. But you weren't in
So
it.
if you watch I forget what year it is. I think it's like the 2014 version of Dracula. That was filmed in a little place called Limavady Country Park or Roe Valley Country Park. So
Mhm.
literally 5 minutes from where I live.
Okay. Um
what you're
Well,
actually looking up.
Bram Stoker was Irish.
Yes, but I don't know where he actually wrote the
Oh
book
well,
because
yeah, that's true. He might
yeah.
have printed it in another, but it's an Irish person, an Irish author who
Mm.
wrote that story.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me though, because I lived for a little while out in Romania, but like that's where he set the book because he was so fascinated by the Carpathian Mountains. And like to be fair, those are the Carpathians. If you've ever been to them, it's a weird mixture between beautiful and like genuinely quite eerie. Because like whenever the mist and stuff does descend and it comes down, because like you're surrounded by trees on either side, and like you say it's a motorway, it's not really. It's like a small little road, and like whenever the mist does come down in through the trees, like it covers the road quite well. So I can see why he was enamored with it, shall I say? So.
And that's in Romania, you said.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah,
Oh nope, not
and
you, sorry.
Dracula, um, I I actually read it like a couple years ago, maybe for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
and like the actual character is someone who lived hundreds of years ago. I think he was
Vlad
like
the Impaler.
the Impaler. That's it. See, you're so good at remembering details of stories.
Unless like I'm pretty good at being put in the spot, but like if I was to prepare for something and then someone quizzes me, my brain suddenly goes, ah, yep, I forgot everything I've learned.
Okay, but if you're just able to like think of it off the top of your head, yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I couldn't remember. Yeah. So anyway,
Mhm.
he I don't know if there really was someone by that name, but that's like the
Yeah,
original.
no, he
Yeah.
was
Okay.
historical, Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah. Okay.
He, like, we'll not get into it here because it's quite gruesome, but like, he quite literally did impale his enemies.
So that is that. I wonder how like kind of got connected with Dracula being impaled in order to kill him or something like that. I don't know.
Sort of, but it primarily came from like Vlad had a weird sort of like whenever the method of impaling someone on the spike quite literally let the blood pour out of people. So like I think the whole imagery of the blood pouring out of people, and as
Wow.
you rightly said, then to kill a vampire it needs to be staked through the heart and stuff. So there's probably a lot more to it than that. There's a guy on X I follow, and I forget his handle now, but he's quite knowledgeable about Vlad. But we can maybe do a show on that sometime because like there's a lot of Christian history tied in with Vlad the Impaler as well, so like it would be an interesting topic.
Oh yeah, I'd love to talk about some older novels and stuff. Even like
Hmm.
Frankenstein has some really interesting, philosophical, theological things to
Hmm.
think about. Yeah.
And
Um,
Frankenstein is not the monster.
no, you're right. You're right.
Hmm.
Yeah, I read that too fairly recently. You couldn't get me to read those types of books when I was supposed to, like in high school. I
Yeah,
always struggled to read, but
I
now
think
that
that's the
I'm like
way though.
older, yeah, I'm actually interested in them.
Hmm. There's only one, like you'll already know this, Tim, and then we'll move on. Speaking of books, we'll eventually move into
Yeah,
Joe's book.
we really will.
But the only book that I've ever consistently read from like a young child to the age I am now is The Silver Chair. Like it's the only book I have like
Mm,
read on repeat numerous times. Every other book I might have read maybe once or twice, refresh myself every now and again. But I think everyone has one author that really captivates them. And for me, it was just like, oh, it's so multifaceted. Like we'll maybe do an episode on Chronicle of Narnia series at some
yeah,
stage. But like when I get started on the Silver Chair, I'll be talking for hours.
that's awesome. Well, let me ask you this: do you feel like like when you first read it, were you a child?
Yes, I don't remember what age, but like I was fairly young. I was maybe like 7 or so.
And do you think that's like part of why it still resonates with you is because it connected with you at a young age?
I think so.
Mm.
I think that's part of it, but there's also another part of it of that's what I mean. Like it's similar. Like we actually discussed this in my X space as well. Like sometimes there's teachers in your life that for whatever reason they just stick out to you and like they sort of like motivate you or like they really inspire you. But it's the
Hmm.
same with books. Sometimes there's just books that really captivate your heart and your mind. And for me, now I love a lot of Lewis's works, but there is something unique about the Silver Chair for me. I don't know what it is, but like it created a very vivid world inside my mind to the point where even today when I close my eyes, like I have like a solid picture of what I think Narnia and the underworld looked like. And that's rare for me when I read books. So like I think part of the fact that I can picture it, that I can feel that I can actually be transported into this other world, I think that's like a type of magic. And I don't mean magic in a hokey pokey sense. I mean like
Yeah.
genuine like wonder, amazement type thing. And it's just whenever an author can do that to you, you know you're onto something special.
Oh yeah. Do you know where C.S. Lewis was from originally?
I should know this.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up too. Again, we
You
would just
might have to look it up. I was going
tell
to
our
say
audience, birth.
he Vincent will probably jump in here in a minute. Now I do know
Oh
he had a
yeah, it
home.
says in Belfast. He was
I
born
was
in
going to
Belfast.
say he had a home in my old hometown, Ballymena, somewhere like
Yeah,
on the outskirts of it. But I don't think that was his original house. But it's set up now
man,
as like
all these authors coming from Ireland. That's awesome. It-
see the Irish are known as fighters, but they're
yeah,
also known as poets.
yeah, storytellers, right?
Big storytellers. Like a
Yeah,
lot of that comes from like a lot of her books or authors that have come now have came from like a long line of how the Irish used to tell songs was through singing.
that's
So,
cool.
you know, I think of my granddad and then back to like obviously I didn't know my great granddad very well because he died when I was quite young, but like I remember him even sitting around and singing. So like it's just something that's always been in Irish men is either they fight or they sing.
They sing to, like, you know, help regulate themselves so they don't start fighting. Is that what it is?
Yeah, plus just a way, like as I say, it was a way for them to tell their own history and things like that. So
Yeah.
it's fascinating because like I find myself like you said it there a while ago, you know, about going back and finding books you wouldn't have read when you were younger. I now find myself listening to songs that as a kid I'd have been like, oh, that's really slow paced and boring. As where
Mm,
now I'm actually hearing the words and I'm like, oh wow, that's rich, that's
yeah.
deep.
Yeah.
So the older you get, the more you start to appreciate like the things that have came before you.
Absolutely. That's so cool. Yeah, and when you mentioned C.S. Lewis, the pictures he put in your mind, it actually makes me think of how, like, I think he said that the whole Narnia story concept came with this image he had of the lamp post
Yep.
and a fawn or something like that, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So I feel
The lamp.
fawn,
I'm not too sure. The fawn sounds right, but I can't remember
the fawn with an
for.
umbrella. Even I think it even went to that extent. Like, and that's what I
Hmm.
mean. Like, he was a very visual person, and I believe that when he got to near death, like that was one of the things he said is the pictures aren't there or something like that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a beautiful. There's a beautiful like seven book like it's leather bound and it's giant like it's massive. It's like I think it's like 600 pounds, but a genuine leather. I think it's goatskin. I'm not sure, but seven bound volume of the Chronicles of Narnia, and I am going to get that at some stage, and it's just going to be on display in my house.
That's awesome. That's great. All right. Well, we're in danger of false advertising here. Everybody's like,
We
okay,
are, yes. People are
what
tuning
about
in.
yeah. Um, is Joe Rigney from Ireland? I wonder.
He is not, although he probably claims some type of Irish heritage.
You think so?
No, I just noticed like a lot of Americans, and like I'm not saying there's a knock, but a lot of Americans are like, "Oh, I've Irish roots," and it's like, how far back?
Yeah. Well, I can't claim that at all because I I don't think I have any Irish in me. So
I honestly don't mind it. I just find it funny though, but because like you do get some of them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we have Irish ancestry," and then you ask them, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know, like 9 generations ago," and you're like, "Probably wouldn't say you're Irish then, to be honest," but I get it.
yeah, I know what you're I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So last time, just kind of refresh everybody, we
Yes.
talked about the definition of empathy and how empathy can go wrong. It can be a good virtue of compassion, and but applied in the wrong way. And then we talked about how the world we're living in right now, and this is all from the book. Uh, he talks about how we're under, kind of in the back of our mind, whether we realize it or not, like there's this progressive gaze, like we're always trying to make sure we say things and kind of cater to this progressive mentality that's so
Yep.
pervasive in our culture today. And he uses I forget the man's name, but he uses that, um, kind of the three different worlds that we've lived in the last 50 years or so, where you had the
Hmm.
more positive view toward Christianity, then a neutral view, and now a more negative view. Now I told you last time I quibble with that a little bit, because
Yeah.
I don't know that you can really divide it out that way. I think
Hmm.
aspects of our society are more hostile today, but then again, they've always been hostile to Christianity as long as I've been alive. I can think of a lot of hostility toward Christianity, depending on where you
Yeah.
live, of course. Yeah,
Hmm.
but and there's more to that too. That I'm sure there's a lot to talk about there. But the point being that yes, the kind of the overall condition of our culture right now is such that there is more of um, sensitivity about certain things. And if you don't say things the right way, we all feel that pressure that we have to
Hmm.
say things a certain way to be concerned about, the current cultural sensitivities that we're facing now. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's kind of the first part. And we we took a long time to get through that. And I felt like there were a lot of people watching live, but then for the replay, it didn't look like we had a lot of views. So for those of you watching, if you're enjoying this content, it'd be wonderful if you share it with people that you think will like this sort of thing,
Yeah.
because it will really help kind of spread what we're trying to do here on our on our show that we haven't named yet.
We will eventually get a name.
Yes, eventually. So yeah, what we're going to talk about in the last two chapters, and I think I can pull up the table of contents here.
Hmm.
We're going to talk about feminism. Uh,
Woohoo.
yeah. Oops. I almost had it ready. Okay, here we go. So, um, yeah. So you see chapter 5 there. It says feminism, queen of the woke. And then the
Hmm.
final chapter is in praise of compassion before the two appendixes. So we'll talk about all of that today. And kind
Hmm.
of to introduce the feminism theme, I actually wanted to show something that kind of came to my mind, what he's talking about, because he's talking about um, how feminism has influenced the culture as well as the church.
Yeah.
And the video that I wanted to show has nothing to do with church, but it really kind of shows, like, I mean, if you want to talk about feminism. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you know, like, there's been a remake of the Disney movie Snow White that just came out. Have you been hearing things about it?
I avoid Disney like the plague, if I'm
Yeah,
honest, because
yeah, I can
Disney are
understand.
incredibly woke. But
I won't show you the movie, but I am going to show you the just like a little clip here of the actress talking,
yep.
because I want this is really shows you, like, this is the, like, mentality of an actress. And like Snow White is like supposed to be a family movie, so it really, like, speaks to where our culture is at.
Mm-hmm.
And so here you go.
Wow. The reality is that the cartoon was made 85 years ago, and therefore it's extremely dated.
Okay, so she's talking about the original cartoon, and she's saying how dated it is. You know, it's not up with the times.
When it comes to the ideas of women being in roles of power and what a woman is fit for in the world. And so when we came to reimagining the actual role of Snow White, it became about the fairest of them all, meaning who is the most just and who can become a fantastic leader. And the reality is, you know, Snow White has to learn a lot of lessons about coming into her own power before she can come into power over a kingdom.
Also, the fact.
What I found so interesting about that is her use of power, like over and over, right? And about how like women in the past, you know, they were relegated to these roles that she kind of deems as being, you know, not very important. But that women now can have power.
Yeah, and it's also like it's very buzzwordy, like the fact that she even talked about coming into her own power. Like there's this idea, like
Mm.
you know, I believe they call the concept the divine feminine or the feminine divine, and it's this idea that within each woman that there's this, you know, goddess that's just bursting to come out, and she just needs to realize her inner power, and it's all nonsense. Like, to speak plainly, it's very clearly nonsense. Now, women have a true dignity given to them by God.
Mm.
Men are to respect that dignity. Women are to respect that dignity in themselves. But part of respecting that dignity in themselves means staying away from that very, like, it's just such this idea that it, and we'll get into this in more depth, but obviously this idea of feminism it's so opposed to like the woman's natural role. So like
Mm.
it hates the idea of women being homemakers. It hates the idea of women being mothers. It hates the idea, you know, of women just perhaps maybe even just being happy being a wife. Like it really truly does detest that idea, and that's why I find it really interesting that like I cringed a lot during that interview because, like you said it yourself, like she named power at least 3 or 4 times, but that phrase "she needs to find her inner power" is something that is repeated so often, and it's just such a like, what does that even mean? Like, what? It's a very silly
Almost
concept, but we'll get.
exposes it almost exposes yeah, it's so interesting. Like it's like there is an insecurity there, really, you
Mhm.
know, to feel like you need to find this inner power almost reveals that you don't feel power. And I
Yep.
think that's the thing, you know, what Rigney is hitting on is that women are by nature, you know, they're wired a certain way. I think everybody knows that, you know,
Yep.
but like, so like this insecure, and I know if my wife, she would agree with what I'm saying. Like many times she would openly say like she feels way more like she needs to have a sense of safety than I do. You know,
Hmm.
like that there's just more vulnerability for women. And that's why I think like they're drawn to rich men, for example. It to them speaks to security. It speaks to like
Yeah.
I know that they're gonna be able to take care of me because they
Hmm.
have wealth, you know. So and it's that doesn't mean that's all negative. That's the thing. You know, there are really important traits of women, and what Rigney says is that empathy is something tied very much to femininity. That women tend to have a very sensitive, caring nature. Makes sense,
Yeah.
motherhood, right? But
Yeah.
that can be an asset in a certain sphere, but can be a liability when it comes to things like church leadership. So
Yep.
really, he's tying in like the feminism of the culture and how now it's really impacting church.
Yeah.
And you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I do also just want to say Colton's joined the stream, so good to see
Oh
you, Colton.
yeah,
Um,
good to see you, Colton.
now this is where I jumped the gun in the last episode,
You already
because
talked about
this
this
was probably I did, but now I get to talk about it in a little bit
in
more
depth.
detail, which is
Yeah.
nice. This is what Rigney was pointing out. Like, just as you said to him, like, he points out that it is good that women are naturally prone to being compassionate.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. That's a virtue. A woman that looks after her family, praise the Lord. A woman that looks after her children, praise the Lord. These are all good things. But what Rigney's pointed out now is we live in a culture where motherhood has been so diminished, so trampled underfoot. Women are being taught you don't need to be a mother, you don't need to be a wife. Go you and find that inner power within, and go have a great career, go have all this. And it's leaving women not only to be a slave to the workforce, which they absolutely hate. Like there's videos like we should react to these sometimes, or sometime, because I think it is telling. Like there are women out there getting on camera crying and saying, "Why do I have to work a 9 to 5 just to make ends meet?" And like not even make ends meet. And the reality is you shouldn't have to. That's the man's role. And like that rubs a lot of people up the wrong way, but that is the truth. The men are the providers. Now, does it mean that women cannot work at all? No, that's a different subject. We can get into that another time. But we're going back to what Rigney says about, whenever you elevate a virtue to the part where it becomes like a god, it becomes a demon. So what he rightly points out is there are a lot of women out there that put off having children, put off getting married, and now maybe they're, you know, in their 40s, they're childless, they're struggling to find a partner. They're now mothering instincts come out in another format. They don't have children to give it to, so they'll maybe give it to dogs or cats, or maybe LGBT community. And this is what he points out. That's now extremely dangerous because now you've got a mama bear who's not actually a mama,
Yeah.
and she is very protective over things that I don't want to say that she shouldn't be protective over, but her nurturing instincts come out in the wrong way, and they come out as a vice rather than a virtue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly where we are as a culture, because I know we could pull out anecdotes all day long, and you can say you've seen that, and I can say I've seen the other, and maybe someone could come on and argue the opposite and say, well, you know what, you're both wrong. I've seen it this way. So we can all provide examples all day long, but I know women in my life who are now in their 50s, and they would very clearly tell young women, I put my career first, and I regret it.
Hmm.
I'm now alone, and it's sad. Like it really is sad because like
Yeah.
a lot of young women out there do want the family, but they feel embarrassed and shamed into not having a family because of this idea of go find the inner power within.
Yeah. 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 It always seemed kind of backwards to me. Like it would make more sense for women when they're younger to focus on motherhood, and then when they're older, after the kids are grown, they might branch out and be able to do other things. But you can't really do it the opposite way.
No,
you
doesn't
know?
work like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is where it goes back to the concept. You see, this is what I say. Like this is where he showed me he was a very good author, because like his chapters tied together really well. So I think it was in chapter maybe 3 or 4 he talks about certain things steering the ship behind the church, and this is one of them. Feminism is unfortunately in a lot of churches, because you not only have men, like good men, who are afraid to speak up for biblical principles because they're like, well, let's have empathy. Let's. Why should our sisters feel left out? They should also preach. They should also pastor. So that drives that feminine force, and then you get women who come into power in the church, and it becomes a bad thing. Not, and this, as I say, this will rub a lot of people up the wrong way, and technically I rubbed someone up the wrong way today on X already, so there's par for the course. But
It's X. That's what you do on X.
you could honestly quote a Bible verse on X, and someone will take issue with it. But anyway, whenever you get women in positions of leadership, they are, and people will complain about this, but statistically, the data shows it. Women are more prone to reason from their emotions. So they're not reasoning with logic the way men would. And I know a lot of people will jump on that and go, "Are you saying women can't reason logically?" No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they're more prone to reason from their emotions. So like, per Sally, she's having a bad day in the office versus, per me, who's having a bad day in the office, and like we go both ask for time off or whatever. if you have a female boss, she's probably more prone to being compassionate to Sally than she is to me. Because it would become, well, you're a man, just suck it up and get on with it. As we're poor Sally, she's struggling. So it's driven by emotion. And Joe Rigney rightly points out that whenever women enter into, especially pastoral places in churches, even if someone's caught in a grievous sin, it no longer boils down to, well, they need to be repentant. We need to implement church discipline. It all comes about, well, why did this person do this? We have to see it from their point of view. Why can we not place ourselves in their shoes? They were in a bad place. They didn't mean to do this. It all becomes very emotional. And again, feminism is a golden calf. So, like, I'm expecting, I know most of our audience watching right now will probably agree with this.
It's probably all men
But
right
I
now.
would, all men right now. But I guarantee you, even on X or in the comments after, we will probably get someone taking issue with what we're saying. But that only points to the fact that it truly is a golden calf. Like, you can not speak about this subject without someone getting extremely heated about it because it's a golden calf to them. And that's what Rigney was pointing out. So I don't know if this chapter struck you as much, but this is the chapter that really, like, he was slowly convincing me throughout the book anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But this was the chapter where it really clicked in my head, and I was like, that's true, because, like, I have seen that happen even in my old church.
Yeah. Oh, for sure, it's very relevant. I mean, it's, you can kind of see the creep, even like, so liberal churches, like mainline churches in America, have been theologically liberal for, a very, very long time. But like conservative evangelical, they've tended to be a lot more, set on certain things because
Mm-hmm.
they're theologically conservative. But you're starting to see like women put in more prominent positions, even in mainstream evangelical churches, and
Yep.
like at least starting to like have certain kinds of pastoral roles, if not outright just calling them pastor, and like where you'll have a husband and wife as pastor, for example. And
Yep.
it's tough, and I have friends that I'm with that they're part of churches like that, and I love them, and I believe you know that we have a lot of overlap in our viewpoints, but that's one area where I still hold to a male leadership role in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you feel like a dinosaur because but feminism has really reshaped so much of our thinking, and like
Mm-hmm.
what we consider extreme even is so different now than what would have been extreme you know just a few decades ago.
Well, you nailed it there by saying, like, you sometimes feel like you're being a dinosaur. And, like, I have quite a strong personality at times. Like,
Yeah.
if I know something's truth, I can be extremely stubborn and even combative with it. Because, like, when
Mm.
people challenge it, I don't take it as a challenge to me. I see it as you having an issue with my God. That then becomes personal. Now, that's an area in me that sometimes needs work. Because, like, as I say, there's times where I'm combative where maybe I don't need to be. Because scripture
Right.
does say that God's servant should be, gentle, peaceable, and able to give an answer.
Yeah.
And I do try to do that. I try to be fair, but there are sometimes, like, John Calvin has a great quote. I'm going to butcher it now, but it's something like, I can't remember. I'm going to have to look it up. But essentially, he talks about himself as if he was a dog, and he's like, "What type of dog would I be, or whatever, if my master was attacked and I didn't bark?" It's something along those
Mm.
lines. I can't remember what exactly, and
Mhm,
I'll look it up.
mhm.
I know I butchered it, but anyway, that's the drift of
Makes
it.
sense.
Yeah, but where I was going with that is there are certain issues I think you honestly have to be dogmatic on, and it's not because I think sometimes people think, and I'm going to talk about men here who maybe come from an egalitarian point of view. They think like men like you and me are just cutting that off from women because we want it all to ourselves. No, no, no women allowed. Well, no, that's not the case. Like, we hold our convictions for a reason, and it's because Scripture
Mm.
very clearly says that it's a role for a man. So the way you and I, and Tim, I'm speaking for you here, but correct me if I'm wrong. If God says a male has this role and a female has that role, honestly, who am I to say, no, God, you got it wrong? Or like, who am I to say, okay, that was true 1,500 years ago, but now, no, now we're more modern, we're more up to date. It suggests that truth changes and that God wasn't capable of communicating a message that would stand the test of time. And that's my biggest issue with it, because again, one of the conversations I had today on X was actually over this clip. There's a guy, I don't know if you know him, I'm going to pronounce his second name wrong, but he goes around student campuses with his son. It's a guy called Cliff and Stuart. I believe their last name is pronounced Connectly. They're quite popular evangelists now, but like Cliff sometimes his theology is a little bit So he shared this sorry, Siri's reacting all day for me today. I don't know why. He shared this clip of him saying that he believes that Priscilla was in effect a pastor. So I responded to the clip. I got a lot of feedback back. Some of it was positive, some of it was negative. But one of the things that really does bother me with people that try and open up pastoral or leadership roles to females is they always try to look for loopholes. It's always like, well, what about this situation? What about that situation? Because it's the idea of what Rigney talked about, concept creep. Yeah. Well, it's the same here. If I can find a way where it may be possible in a certain situation, now I'm just making this up off the top of my head, but say, for example, we're out in Africa, there's no man that's capable of leading, like they don't know a lick of the language to read the Bible, but there's one woman and she knows. Does that mean she should be a pastor? That's a conversation we can get into. I still wouldn't feel comfortable with it, but that's what they're trying to nail you down on. Because if they can nail you down onto saying, okay, it may be permissible there, well, guess what? Floodgates are open now. What about this situation? What about that situation? What about the other?
True.
And it's the same. People use this idea when talking about abortion too. That's why they'll often bring up, well, is it permissible in this case or that case or this? And that's what I say. I can be very stubborn, and I just say no, it's not permissible. But anyway, I went off on a tangent.
No, that's really good. Yeah, and think what I would add to everything you're saying is it does come down to what God says, and you're right. Like he doesn't need to revise what he thinks about something because he knows what's perfect. And I think when you're looking at scripture, some people would say that it's just a passage here, it's just a passage there. And I think, no, it's the same with like our sexuality. It's not if you can find a passage here, it's like, what's the overarching viewpoint that scripture gives on these things? And like right from the beginning, like Adam is alone. It's not good for him to be alone. Like this is not a good situation. We know, like, we really need women. We really do. But she's complementing who he is as a man. She's that helpmeet. She's that assistant. She's that person who fulfills and completes what he is not. And I think that's, to me, like I know that feminism means, it's usually like we're trying to promote women to do things they couldn't do before, or to be equal with men. I think in some ways, like, I'm more of a true feminist. I really believe in femininity the way that God created it, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't call myself that, but in the sense of like,
no, I was going to say we give the wrong connotation.
But in the sense of like actually embracing femininity. That's what's always struck me as ironic about feminism, is it almost hates femininity. It's like, well, wait a second. Like, if you're a feminist, you should actually embrace it and see it as a good thing. And so I feel like it's the way God expresses it and you see it throughout scripture. And I think that's why when Paul talks about it in the New Testament, he talks about it in creation terms. It's not just a cultural thing. He's not saying, and there are cultural things in the Bible where, for this for this specific situation, this is how we're going to handle it. But when it comes to teaching and when it comes to leadership, it's the pattern. I mean, look at Jesus. I don't think Jesus would have had a problem revolutionizing anything he wanted to. Like he was saying, you've read it in this, but I say to you this. And yet when Jesus picks his 12 apostles who are going to lead the church, what do you know? He picks all men.
Oh man,
Doesn't
yeah.
seem like a coincidence to me, you know? So
No,
I think it's
and
God's overarching presentation in scripture. Yeah.
yeah, it's just it's with and tying this back into the book because like he goes off into talking about we mentioned it briefly in the previous episode, but like whenever churches do cave into this like idea of okay, well we need to have a feminist voice, we need to have a Black Lives Matter voice, we need to have an LGBTQ voice, it becomes all these minority voices. And very soon, instead of it being compassion upon these people in their groups, it becomes empathy. And what empathy does now says is your feelings of being feeling marginalized
Yeah.
trump over scripture. Because I can't preach these passages anymore now because they offend or no, I'm not using this term, but I'm saying pastors that would affirm, in America we can hear pastors, but pastors that would affirm, LGBTQ brethren or, this brethren or that brethren, their feelings now becomes first and foremost. And that's why you see so many videos online of, and again, really is going to start to sound like I work for them, but Protestia do put out great videos on this all the time, but like,
Are they sponsoring you secretly?
I was gonna say at this rate they're gonna have to because like I feel like I'm giving them free promo. But they often put out videos of like they've coined the term pastrix, and I think it's quite
Yes.
funny. But they always post these videos of like these pastrixes that get up and like their prayers are so woke in the sense like all scripture has been removed. Like they've like sort of retermed everything, and it's like I saw one today there about someone talking about this open up a prayer now to whatever universal God you believe in, and it's like,
Yeah.
why are you even still calling yourself a church? Like it's just stupid. Like just stop it. You
And,
clearly don't believe a thing.
and it
So
really does tie into I think Rigney makes a good case, and he makes a connection there that we're not saying that women are bad in the way that they think or the way they approach things, but it has a place. It has a place. And the problem is, like I said, feminism a lot of times wants the male role. It wants
mhm,
it actually almost covets masculine prerogatives. But when you put a woman in those places, she's still going to be a woman. Like
yep,
men and women are different. And so like he talks
absolutely.
about like a really good example he gives in the book is um, when you have feminism in public discourse, it actually begins to influence the way that we feel we can talk about certain things, and
Yes.
it will even weaponize victimhood. He says something to that
Hmm.
extent. So he gives the example of college campuses, where
Yep.
that's actually, and I think he says something like they're the most neurotically protected institutions, and it's so funny because that really is true. Like
Hmm.
people are flipping out all the time on college campuses because they're offended about something, you know?
Yeah. No, I was just gonna add like. I remember because I had to reread these chapters again to refresh my memory.
Yeah.
Um, And I remember as he was talking about that, the reason why he points that out about how like college campuses now are this like neurotic place of like you can't say this, you're not welcome, you get out, we'll throw a protest. As he rightly points out, these campuses were once the champions of free speech.
Yeah.
Come, debate your ideas. Let's debate.
Right.
Let's hear what you have to say. Let's hear what you have to say.
Yep.
Nowadays, if you my geography of America is not great, but like you could name pretty much any campus in America and tell them Ben Shapiro's showing up, and you can be guaranteed that event, depending on what state he's in. Because like if it's a right wing state, probably not, but if it's left leaning, you could probably guarantee that Shapiro's like appearance would be cancelled within 24 hours. And
Yeah.
it's just that idea of like, it really is like, it's weaponized emotion,
Yeah.
because you've got all
Weaponized
these
emotion,
people.
yep.
Yeah, because you've got all these people calling in and saying, I'm a student here, that this makes me feel unsafe.
Yeah,
I
safe spaces. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
I was
And
going to say,
it's
too, when you do your space on X, that's not a
that is
safe
not a safe
space.
space. It's definitely not. Come on, you're probably going to get roasted. But whenever you think about it, like part of me doesn't like that universities do cancel speakers, but whenever you think about the pressure they must be under from like numerous students calling in and saying like almost to the effect, and like people may think I'm exaggerating with this, but there's video evidence out there. You've got students calling in saying that they feel suicidal if
Right.
such and such is allowed to speak. And it's like, really?
Right.
Words are going to hurt you to that degree? Like, you can't
Right.
freely debate an idea? Like,
Well,
no one's asking you to come.
going back to what you hit on, because I think this is the part of the chapter where he brings it in. He says basically, if women reject husbands, then it's like they're still going to be by nature who they are. And
Hmm.
like what has happened in a lot of these situations, it's not bad to be protective, but if you're in a household, that is going to work a certain way. And I think even in the
Yep.
church, it's going to work a certain way. You can have fathers and
Hmm.
mothers in the church. You can have the men who are protecting, who are leading, who are, really helping to set the tone. And then
Yep.
you have women who should be care. Hey, by the way, we've got this need here. We need to make sure we're helping with this. We have this
Hmm.
person who's hurting. My wife can just look at someone, just look at them and know that
Yep.
person is having a problem, and I'm
Hmm.
oblivious, so those are
No, yeah.
good traits.
Hmm.
But if they reject the spheres in which those traits are going to come out in a healthy way, he actually uses the term toxic female empathy,
Hmm.
and it's like kind of a mirror image of toxic masculinity that we hear so much about, but there can also be toxic female empathy.
100%, because as I say, unless there are women listening thinking here's just two men ragging on women. No, I would say the same. There are areas where if a man cannot, I would just put it towards a family situation. If a man does not have a family to protect and to provide for, his masculinity more than likely is going to leak out in other areas.
True.
And because it's not a good
Right.
usage of his masculinity, it probably does look like it coming out and maybe fighting on the street, or being
Right.
constantly aggressive towards people, because men have an urge to be beat their chest, look at
Mm.
me, I can provide.
Yep.
That is something deep down ingrained in men, and there's a virtue to it,
Right.
but there's also the vice. So like,
Yep.
we're not just ragging on women here, like,
Oh, no.
because if you put it like, if we flipped it round, so we're saying women can't be involved in the leadership in the church, because that's what Joe Rigney's arguing here for. So this is what we're talking about at the moment, his book.
Mm-hmm.
But if we put it around to another situation, like, I can't even think of an example off the top of my head, but like a role right here, for example, women can teach other women, so young women in the faith. It would be wrong of me as a man to go into a women's Bible study and try to teach them,
Right.
because the things that I'm probably going to be teaching them is probably not going to be very relational to them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know a lick about
Yeah.
homemaking. I don't, so it's a bad place for my giftings to come out, because
Yeah.
God's designed me to work over here, not there. And it's the same for them. And it's just, I honestly think eh, the church needs to do better in combating what the world is currently teaching the current generation of women, because they are being taught that your career is more important. You can have kids later on in life. Don't worry about it. You'll find a husband later on in life. And the reality is, a lot of women get either to their 30s or towards their 30s, and reality kicks in, and it's like,
Mm.
I'm running out of time. I
Mm.
don't have a year now to meet a guy. I don't have a year to get to know a guy. I don't have a year to plan a wedding or whatever, because those all become so. Like this, say she meets a guy at 31, then she's
Mhm.
got a year of knowing him to maybe 32, 33. They're planning the wedding. It's maybe 34 before she's married. First kid maybe at 35. It's getting later and later and later.
Mm.
And I know women in my life that personally feel that way, and they're like, my clock is running out,
Mm.
and I feel for them because
Yeah.
as a man, we don't quite have that same biological clock.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's women were like, God give them a good and glorious role. And I know so many women that are so happy in their lives of being a wife and like a mother,
Mhm.
and even if she's not married and even if she doesn't have kids, I know a lot of women that are just happily serving the Lord, not seeking a career, and there's
Yes.
just a joy about them. They're relaxed because they're in an environment where they can be themselves, they can be feminine. As where when a woman goes into a workforce, guess what she has to do?
Yeah.
Girl boss time. I have to be mean.
Yeah.
I have to be like the man. I have to be ruthless. Because whenever Tim, I don't know if you've ever, again, this is probably going to ruffle people, but I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of working for a female boss in the workplace.
Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah.
It's not pleasant. It's not pleasant.
Wow. He's really so. How much of our audience right now is female, or did we just lose all the female viewers?
All
Yeah.
gone.
Well, I was
No,
going to say actually that it's not so much good versus bad with certain things, and even like what
mm-hmm.
you're talking about here with a boss. I actually had one female boss who was one of the most excellent bosses. I haven't had a
Oh,
lot of
it's
secular
not all
bosses because
cases.
I'm more of in a church setting. But when I've been in a secular environment, and I currently have a part-time job in a secular environment,
Mm-hmm.
um, I would say that some of the women bosses can be really good, for sure. And just like men, there can be ones that are better with. But
Mm-hmm.
what I will say about men and women, as a generality, is that women tend to be more collaborative by nature, and it's very like you just think of a circle almost. We're all in a
Mm-hmm.
circle. That's why like when women like get together, they love to be around a table. And I'm generalizing, but
Mm-hmm.
women love that. When we get together as guys, so often like we want to do things. We want to like we love to be active. We love to. Doesn't mean we can't talk, but it just a lot of times. And then when we think about like how we communicate as men, I had two older brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Fighting was, and I don't mean physically, but I mean even
Yeah.
verbally. Fighting was a good thing. It was like we never
Mm-hmm.
looked at that as like. Now, obviously, we had our little young, when we were young, we fought. But I mean, in terms of like helping us understand things, helping us like express what we really think, and even just understanding how everything works. We're hierarchical, is the bottom
Yep.
line, right? Men like
Yep.
ranks. We like knowing
Yep.
that guy's in charge. He is the boss. He's better than me. Like I want to know that, at least know, areas that he's better than me. Whereas I
Yeah,
feel
because
like with
it also
women,
pushes a
they're
guy
much
too.
more like, okay, how can we collaborate? How can we be more equal in certain ways?
Mm-hmm.
That's my
Yeah.
generalization.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And like going back to what I was saying, that's not me saying every female boss is like that. But what I'm
Right.
saying is a lot of women are though, but because in order for them to advance in their career, they do have like we talked about the progressive gaze and the white gaze.
Yeah.
She has the male gaze. She thinks
Ah,
all my male peers are watching what I do. They don't think I'm good enough. They don't, so she tries extra hard. And
I
it's not
see.
just her working harder than the guys, but now her
Right.
mentality changes.
Right.
She's no longer feminine in how she handles herself.
Right.
She'll start verbally sparring the way the
Mm.
guys, like exactly what you said. She'll verbally spar with the guys.
Hmm.
And I, I hate saying this, but it is true. I've had three female bosses in my life, and all three of them
Hmm.
had that mentality where they belittled the men underneath them because they
Hmm.
were now in a position. I'm the boss. I'm the power.
Hmm.
So that's not me saying that's all women. I'm just saying whenever women do go into the workforce, because of the nature of it, and because certain jobs are more men, that the women go into that, and that's what Joe Rigney was talking about. This idea
Yeah.
now of her femininity gets turned into masculinity because it's right. Well, I have to compete. If I want to advance in my career, I have to compete. Women weren't made to be combative like that. They just
Right.
weren't.
Right.
So whenever you do see that then in the workforce, it is a big turn off because you're seeing a woman who's meant to be gentle and feminine, and you're seeing now a real like masculine side to her.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about you that and when I say turn off, I'm not talking about attraction. I mean like it's just a genuine human
Yeah.
nature turn off. Like you'll look at that and go, there's something not right about that, because I think deep
Yeah.
down innately we all know she was made for so much more, but she's acting in a capacity that's not right for her.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we should also think in terms of, there are spheres, in terms of, what people are fitted for and what they're
Mm-hmm.
wired to do. And I think sometimes there's overlap. I know, like, there's a certain amount of, when we think of traditional roles, where it's like, actually it's not biblical that the guy has to be the one to do every little thing that's
Yeah.
traditionally assigned to men. Like, so for example, for me, I know with my two older brothers, like, I'm definitely the most, like, sensitive, and you know, I'm not like the strongest, and I'm not the biggest risk taker. I have one brother who definitely has high traits in those areas, and I got
Yep.
to hang out with him yesterday. Actually, it was awesome. And
Good.
so, I feel like even within that sphere of being a man, there's variety there. Like,
Oh yeah.
I will gladly, like, if we're going to go do something that involves confrontation, physical, like fighting, I'm probably not the frontline person, just to be very honest, but but at the same time, you need different things. Like, so for
You
example, if
do.
you're talking about a battle, you need strategists. You need people that can, think of the big picture, integrate plans, do all the analysis, all of that sort of thing. So there's different roles even within the spheres that we're given. So when we say that
Yep.
women are fitted to certain things, it doesn't mean all women have to do the exact same things.
No. Mm-hmm.
Women can even be bosses, and I think in certain spheres they can make good bosses. But what you're talking about is some women are in things that don't
More
necessarily
in
fit them
like,
well.
yeah, more like, so I'll not name my previous jobs, but let's just say I worked in a very high office environment where
Okay.
money is involved. We'll put it that way. And if people
Yeah.
can't work it out from that, I don't know what to tell them. Um, but the women in those roles were cutthroat. I mean, like cutthroat. And whenever you talk to them, like on their break and stuff, their more natural feminine side came out. But then when you see them straight
Yeah.
back at their desk, it's woof. And
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting.
it's a night and day difference, and that's what I mean, because like I remember one of those women. She was nearing her retirement whenever I first joined, and she kept talking about how she had done 20 odd years in this. I almost
Yep.
said it, but
Yep. Yep.
in
Yep.
this position,
Yep.
and she hated it. And I
Oh.
remember asking her,
Yeah.
well, then why
Why do
have
you
you
do it?
done 20 years
Yeah.
here? And she's like, well, it's me and my own. Like, what else can I do? And I'm like,
Uh,
wow,
yeah.
okay. So
Yeah.
that's what I mean. Like, you get
Yeah.
women that feel like they're trapped into that environment because
Yeah.
you know, this caller, Mary, for example, Mary's the woman there that I was talking about. And, say I said to Mary, well, why do you feel? Because she desired it when she was younger. She was hungry for a career because she was told
Mhm.
she needed a career to be successful. She could meet a husband later and have kids later. Those things didn't happen for Mary. And that's not something I'm making up. Like, this is genuinely true. Like, those things didn't
Mm.
happen for Mary. Then she did 20 years in this position, didn't like it. She was only doing it for the money. She had to work until she was at legal retirement age, and she was trapped. But
Yeah.
it developed in Mary that need to be cutthroat, I need to be masculine, I need to be like the guys.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I mean. It's more that aspect, and I think that's what Rigney's getting at is
Yeah.
When he talks about, if a woman's empathy's got no place to come out, it can not only be a mama bear in the sense that she's empathetic towards her children, whatever that is, but then when the ferocious side comes out, heaven help you. And I think that's what Rigney's talking about, because like a lot of churches have felt the wrath of these like task force groups that arrive in churches, and it's like, you need to be more considerate of this group, you need to be more, because they're the mama bears to those groups, and their empathy
and
is
again,
coming out.
if we would keep things in their right sphere, in their right place, then it could be healthy, because like I do think that men, if you just have men together like all the time and like there's no female influence, that has its own problems. It's not like men don't, they function perfectly all the time. You know what I mean?
Oh no, far from
it. So I feel like that, like, so I'm thinking of like in the home and in the church, like both places need men and women, but they need men and women who accept how God created them. So this kind of hits on one other thing that, and we can maybe go to chapter 6 a little bit here.
Yeah.
He talks about how there are natural complementarianism, not natural complementarians and ideological complementarians. And natural complementarianism basically has a viewpoint that this is God's design. This is how he designed it in nature. It's meant to be this way by God's design. Ideological complementarians, it's more of like, we feel like, this is the right thing to do, but at heart, he says, they end up being egalitarian. And I think that what he said, that's why I said earlier, I look at the whole of Scripture. I don't just think you take one verse here or no, it's really all of Scripture. And I'm a natural complementarian, definitely. If I had to categorize myself, like, I think I've always felt like it's so obvious that men and women are different and are suited to different things. Like, I just watched a video earlier today. Like, this is so like random, but like women, it was like this thing on TikTok, I guess, where women were like with their boyfriend or their husband, and they're like on their knees, and they're like on their hands and knees, and the women take their hand and put them behind their back. And then the guy tries to do it. And if he's on his hands and knees and he immediately falls forward. And it's like, even just our center of gravity is different.
Yeah.
And that's a very minor thing, let alone like the way we think, the way we process things, the way that we're designed. Literally, you can dig up bones.
Bone density in man.
You can dig up bones and be like, this was a female or this was a male. We're different.
Yeah. It's that's, I think, that's where you would go to Romans 1, where there's a lot of truth suppression that goes on because of unrighteousness, and like it's most Western cultures now, because like it's true here in Ireland, it's true there in America, it's true in England. People don't like hearing that anymore, that there are biological differences between men and women, and not just biological. Like, there's emotional differences, there's rational differences.
Yeah.
And I think our culture's problem today is they have this warped sense of what equality means, because they take equality to have to mean, that we're equal in, our bone density, we're equal in our, emotional capacity. And it's like, but that's like, it's just observably not true. And because I, as a guy, have naturally bigger muscles and naturally bigger bone structure than you as a female, that doesn't somehow make you less valuable. But it does mean, if we were to get into like, I'm not suggesting this, but I'm just saying, heaven forbid I had to get in a fist fight with a woman, it's not going to go well. Like, that's a realm where I am at a physical advantage. Now, if we were to go into like looking after a child, she's going to run rings around me because I'd be a headless chicken.
This is a good point for you to tell the audience. What do you call daycare where you live?
Well, it's not. It's not. It's more the role versus what I would
What was
call it.
the
But
yeah? What was the role?
yeah,
What did
so
you
like daycare workers over here, like if they're looking after someone's children, they're called child minders.
so
They
so
mind the child.
child minders are often women, is what you're saying. They're suited
Yes.
to that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I had to help. It's funny here. Like here's a good example, and this is what I mean by like certain jobs are female dominant versus male dominant. I had to help my mum there not so long ago re-register online because like she's not great with technology, and out of her area there was 2,000 registered childminders.
yeah.
Guess how many were male?
Just a handful.
Zero.
Oh, not even one.
Not
Wow,
even one.
wow. Okay.
Yeah,
And I've heard
and
that
again,
when cultures actually give people the choice, like they're not worried about outcome, they're just worried about like you choose the role you want, that it ends up being very disproportionate. Certain roles men gravitate to and women gravitate very often to other roles.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
Now there is a weird thing about men. Before we leave this topic, that it is really interesting about it's so true that when women tease men about looking in the refrigerator and you can't see the thing that's right, it's true. I don't know why, but as a guy, like if the ketchup is not where I normally think it would be or something, I can't see it. It's invisible. I don't know
Like,
what
see,
it
I don't think it's invisible. I think they purposely know what we're looking for, remove it, and then they come and bring it. It's like, look, it was right there.
is. No.
Pull up. Colton's made a funny comment there.
Okay.
His last one.
Is it the am I gonna get
Yeah,
canceled when I join? Yes, Colton. Yes,
probably, brother.
we expect we're gonna definitely get you in trouble. That's our goal.
Well, that's Tim's goal. I just want to interview you. But
Yeah,
yeah,
but we've seen how
it's
cantankerous you can be today.
well,
Yeah.
this is what I say. I have like I can be very opinionated, but I always try to have my opinions based on scripture. And no, does that
Mm.
mean that I am right on everything? No, probably not. Like I'm probably gonna, eventually hear one day from the Lord, okay, well, you said this and it's not actually this. Like
Yeah.
that's fine. I'll take correction where it needs to be given. But I would say any man that firmly believes something to be true in the scripture but yet won't stand for it, I don't know what to say about that. Like and
Yeah.
I know not every man is
Mm.
what's the word? Like I don't want to keep using opinionated. Not every man is naturally confrontational. I can be
Sure.
quite confrontational. I don't mind a good verbal spar.
Mm.
Now I'm not a debater by any sense. So like I don't really I moderate debates. I don't really take part in debates. But if I was to sit down, like one of my favorite things to do with my friends is we will anytime we get together we'll all have like a beer or whatever, we'll all sit around the campfire outside during the summer and we'll all just talk theology. And we all come like from different viewpoints. Like I've got egalitarian friends and I love them to death and they love me to death. We get heated during those moments,
Oh yeah.
but it's always in like, and I'm not just saying this, like it genuinely always is in love
Yeah.
because I don't believe what I believe just for the sake of it, but nor do they. Like they have
Yeah.
reasons for why they say they believe it. Now I happen to think their reasons are flawed, but yet they would look at me and say, "Well, your reasons are flawed." So
Yeah.
there's plenty of things
Mm.
that we can verbally spar with one another on, and I just think, yeah, I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I can be quite opinionated, but like one of the good things about this show is like you and I agree on 90% of things. There's a few wee things where like we go back and forth, not necessarily in a bad way back and forth, but it's good because I hope it shows the audience that you can interact
Mm.
with other believers in a
Yeah.
reasonable way and say, well, look, I don't agree, but it doesn't mean you're wrong and I'm right, or vice versa.
Yeah.
But these are my convictions. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and there's various levels of those things. Like if we were talking about the things that had to do with the essentials of the Christian faith, But both of us not only are in agreement, but that we draw the line on those things. Like, if someone can't really hold to, the Trinitarian doctrine, they're not connected to historic biblical Christianity, right? I mean, that's
No.
just, of course, ultimately their soul is in God's hands. But in terms of how we're going to define Christianity biblically and externally, what we're looking at, those are non-negotiables. But there are other things that are secondary, and then there are even things, even some of the things we're talking about today, in terms of like, how do you carry out your role as a man? How do you carry out your role as a woman? Like I said, there can be some differences in terms of people's uniqueness, but in terms of like how you do church, that's pretty crucial. I mean, it's not an essential doctrine, but it is certainly a secondary doctrine that will affect how, who you can do church with. Like if I were in a setting where, I don't know what I would do, to be honest with you. Like if I were in a town and I needed to go to church and the only Bible teaching church was pastored by a woman, it was either that or no church. You could see how hard that would be, if you held to the convictions we're talking about.
You can, yeah, and I know you're not bringing up for that reason, but like that's often one of the I've told you earlier, people try and present you with those loopholes, and it's like, but you really are like you're searching. So, and I'm not saying you, just repeating that for the audience, but I think of the guy today that I had that verbal joust with an ex. He's a lovely guy. We didn't fall out. We were just quite sparry with each other. But one of his comments was something similar, like, well, if it meant not going to a church at all, or a church pastored by a woman, and he tried to nail me down on that, and I said, brother, respectfully, no, I'm not giving you an answer to a hypothetical when it goes against my convictions,
right?
Because that's my issue with it. And again, going back to the book, Rigney talks about concept creep, and like that's not quite concept creep, but it in a sense it is. It's if I can establish a foothold with you where it's okay in this really rare situation, well, now I'm going to look for another, and if I can look for another, I can look for another, and it goes on and on. And that's how progressivism works.
True.
Because that's like whenever you see progressive churches, they didn't just pop up like that. They were often like, for example, going back to the Corey Mahler episode, the synod he is part of sometimes is accused of being slightly liberal. And then you look, for example, at the difference between the PCA and the PCUSA. Well, the funny thing is the PCUSA used to be the faithful church. And the reason why the PCA popped up is because the PCUSA started going more and more liberal. It didn't start like that. It was a progressive thing. And that's how it gets you. It becomes this, creep. So.
Yeah. So, Rigney says his viewpoint, from what I wrote in my notes, is that feminism in the church ends up leading to liberalism. He sees a connection there, which is interesting.
I would agree.
Yeah. Well, and the question is, does a liberal mentality already cater to feminism? You know what I mean? That those are interesting things to.
I think we go hand in hand.
Yeah. So that's, again, it's a reason to be very guarded and careful about. I hear what you're saying. Yeah, there might be some extreme situations, but we shouldn't let those dictate the trajectory we're trying to set. We should always have ideals as to like, this is the way God intends it, and this is, I mean, look, as a pastor, you deal with that with all kinds of situations. Like, I would never in any way tell a person that divorce is, something they should just go into marriage thinking of as an option. It's not, no, but in a fallen world, it is a reality. It is something that the Bible talks about and addresses, because we do live in a fallen world. But we should still be striving and preaching in terms of the ideal. which is
Yeah,
that God
and
intends marriage. Yeah.
absolutely, and like whenever it comes to, and I don't want to stray off this topic or the topic we're on. I don't want to stray off too much, but just because you mentioned divorce, like the pastor's ideal there should be restoration at all costs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sorry, let me rephrase that. Not at all costs, because that might give someone
The
the
wrong
impression of
impression.
saying, you know, in case of like abuse or something. I'm not talking about that,
No,
but
right.
I'm just talking about in the sense maybe, you know,
Yeah.
the husband feels like he no longer loves the wife or something.
Mm.
The goal for the pastor should be, you need to repent and you need to be restored to your wife, and that should be the goal. It shouldn't be like you should be told divorce is not good. Like, no one wants to see a marriage end. No one.
Yeah.
But yes, because we live in a fallen world, Jesus quite rightly pointed out Moses allowed divorce because of the hardness of mankind's heart, because he knows we're sinners.
Yeah.
And sometimes, while we don't aim for divorce, we don't want divorce, divorce is often a mercy.
Yeah. And tying back to our topic, the thing that came to my mind was the book of Judges, where Deborah is asked to help. I think it's Deborah and Barak. What are you laughing at? You know where I'm going
I'm
with
just
this.
laughing because that's the one thing that got through at me constantly today. What about Deborah?
No. I'm with you on this. Like, listen to
Oh
this.
no, I know you are,
When
but I'm
she
just
when
laughing
she
because
goes into
whenever you
battle,
said Deborah,
she
I was like,
chides
not
the
again.
man. She chides him and says, "They're gonna say a woman." Like
Exactly.
basically,
Yeah.
like, dude, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
But
that's
but but
not
but
really a
but,
good
but that's
example for the feminist side.
no.
No.
And like the interesting thing about that story too is, like, whenever you look at it,
Yeah.
yes, you could say that the woman that it was given into the hands of was Deborah, but you could also say it was Jael or Yael, however that name's pronounced,
Yeah. True.
with the old tent peg.
Hey, that was actually awesome. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no guy has a problem with that, because she was at her tent, and had the milk on hand. She's like, oh yeah.
But she knew what needed to be done, and
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. So like,
yeah,
there's
yeah,
there's an example that if you took what I was
yeah,
saying a moment ago to an extreme,
yeah. That's right.
you know, and sometimes I think some people think maybe that I do have some sort of like an extreme issue. I really don't. I'm just quite strong on gender roles. But like, if you were going to take my position to a real extreme, I would have to criticize her and say, oh no, she should have waited for her husband to drive the tent factory. That wasn't very feminine. But that's not actually what I believe. I believe she did right there. She
Yeah,
did exactly what she was meant to do.
yeah,
Because there are sometimes, and like, I want to be careful with what I say here, because like, it probably will get clipped, but there are some times where gender roles are slightly blurred. Doesn't mean that that becomes the norm.
yeah. Well, and again, it was kind of a feminine way of dealing with it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the guy might have just, fought him right at the entrance to the tent, she's like
Yep.
lulls him to sleep and then takes a tent peg, and
Mm-hmm.
that's actually really creative use of her feminine
Yep.
wiles, or whatever you call it. Um,
Colton's like the old 10 peg story from Judges, Proverbs 31 woman. Yep, pretty much.
absolutely. Anyway, we need to make sure we mention here now that the final chapter
Yep.
talks about compassion.
Yep.
So as a great segue from JL taking the tent peg and driving it into the enemy's head, compassion it's actually something at the end of the book that
Yep.
Joel Rigney does a great job. It's actually a very moving chapter. He uses
Yep.
a story from the Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. I believe that's the author of
Yep.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
then he also he uses John 11, where Jesus is approaching Mary and Martha after Lazarus dies, and dealing with that situation. And I mean, he does a really, and I don't want to give too much away. I hope everybody, after listening,
Yes.
if you're interested in the book, will read it. So we don't necessarily have to like tell everything he says here, but I do want to say, like, he really, at the end of the book, in my opinion, you don't walk away feeling like, oh, well, I should just be, it's okay if I'm not compassionate. No, he's actually talking here about what true compassion looks like,
Yeah.
and really does a good job. I think capping off the book on that positive note.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we can talk about this chapter now, like without giving too much away. But I just made a note here, and I've paraphrased this. So like part of this is Rigney's quote, part of this is me. So again, no
Mm-hmm.
spoilers for the audience, because I honestly do think you really should. I would honestly really recommend this book, because it's also a very short read. Like, it flew by for me. But anyway, it says this: compassion asks, how can I help? Empathy asks, how can I feel what you feel? The first serves the sufferer, the second risks losing sight of the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was my main takeaway. That was my summary of what he really was arguing for here, because compassion, and I'm just going to read it again. Compassion asks, how can I help? Empathy asks, how can I feel what you feel? The first serves the sufferer, and the second risks losing sight of the truth. I think that was.
Hmm.
I know I said this last week about a quote as well that I read that summed up the book, but like this for me really would. If I was to give you a blurb on what the book was, here's my blurb. It's compassion and empathy are different, and it's important to know, because I unfortunately think a lot of the pushback on this book has been that people treat empathy as a synonym for compassion. So therefore, they're like, why is he calling it the sin of empathy? Well, here's now why you're hearing it's been called the sin of empathy, because compassion's a virtue, empathy's a vice.
Yeah, as he's defined them in general, that those are the
Yeah.
categories to help people understand the contrast. But he does such a good job. Again, if you read it, you'll see he's a very clear, very detailed thinker, and so he wouldn't even say that empathy always has to be used in that negative way.
No, no, yeah.
Right? He even is able to use it positively if he wants to. It's just that for his purposes, he's really trying to draw this distinction. And like he says in the appendix, like, even if empathy were a good word, you could still talk about good things in a negative way. You could talk about the sin of anger. You could
Mm-hmm.
talk about the sin of sexual desire. Those are not completely evil things. Anger is not wrong
Yep.
in certain contexts and displayed in the correct ways. Anger can be a very good thing.
Yeah.
And so, you could, but if you name the book The Sin of Anger, nobody would have a problem with that. We talked about that a little bit last week.
Yeah.
But so empathy, but yeah, you're right. The way he defines it in general is that empathy is not tethered to truth, the way that compassion is. And he uses, in
Mm-hmm.
both books that I've read of him, I think he uses the same term, sober-mindedness. And he says in this book that sober-mindedness helps to train our emotions,
Yeah.
right? That we should have really the mind helping to regulate these emotions in terms of how we process things and how we approach different matters, as opposed to letting our emotions just completely run the show.
Yeah. And that's one of the hard things, because like emotions are natural to us in a way,
Yeah.
and they can be good, but whenever it becomes emotion over truth,
Mm.
that's where the problem comes. So like you said, Tim, it's not just the sin of empathy. You can take any virtue, but whenever that virtue becomes more important than, say, scriptural truth, or even just truth in general, you've turned that virtue into a vice. It's now a demon. It's something that's bad. It's something that's been used wrongly. And that is Rigney's entire point. Like, I don't think we'll
Mm.
have time, but I don't think we need to do this either, because like I really would recommend people read this book anyway. But
Mm.
his appendixes were really good. Like,
Yep.
I
Yep.
thoroughly enjoyed those. because in the first one he addresses, a lot of the criticism that he's got. So
That's right.
if you've heard us through the first show and the second show and you're still thinking to yourself, I'm not sure, read the book and then go read how he answers the criticisms, because he had already answered a lot of mine in the book itself. But by the time I got to like the end of the book and I was reading him answer it, I was like, yeah, no, I get you. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I appreciated in the first appendix where he's defending the title that he says sometimes we need to be provocative in how we say things.
Yep.
But what I appreciate is he said, but if we do that, we also have to be willing to patiently correct people and explain ourselves. So he's
Yep.
not like getting fed up with people misunderstanding. He's like, okay, I get it. I know I named it something that people might misunderstand, but I'm willing to explain myself and allow people to understand why I chose to approach the issue in the way that I did.
And it's knowing your audience as well, because like whenever you look at it, Jesus was often very provocative with the Pharisees.
Oh yeah.
Like he and I want to be careful with my words here, because like whenever we're talking about things we do versus what Jesus did, we do have to be aware that there is a divide there in a sense. Like I'm not God, Tim, you're not God.
Right.
But Jesus really looked for opportunities to heal on the Sabbath, because like sometimes when you read the text, it's sometimes more explicit in John. It says Jesus would have looked around for the Pharisees, to see their reaction, and then Jesus healed. Or he would ask the Pharisees, is it lawful for me to do this? Jesus could have just went ahead and healed and then faced the consequences. But Jesus first took the opportunity to say to the Pharisees, is it lawful for me to do this? He was provoking them because he knew you do not understand the law properly. You do not understand mercy. You've raised your human traditions above Scripture. And while that's not necessarily emotion per se, there's another example of what Rigney was talking about, something being raised over Scripture that then became a terror. So like their traditions of men was now a terror. So like you couldn't even heal on the Sabbath. You couldn't do a deed of mercy on the Sabbath. And Jesus looks at them and says, this is me paraphrasing because this is not a direct quote, but he basically looks at them and says, you fools. You're meant to know the law inside and out, and you don't know whether it's good or not for me to heal this man on the Sabbath. What's wrong with you people?
Yeah.
So there's Jesus being provocative. There are times where we should be provocative because it may sting someone in the moment, but sometimes, like, I hate to be crude in my language at times, but it's like getting a good slap up the side of the face.
Yeah.
It hurts and it sucks. But then you're like, oh, right, okay. No, I needed that. I needed to see that. And in a sense, that's what Joe Rigney's trying to do here. He's trying to get... And this book wasn't written primarily for pastors. It was definitely written to a wide audience. But I would say if you're a pastor, you should pick up this book and you should read it. And I think it would be good to keep around you often enough, because it does help you from a pastoral mindset look at your church a little bit differently and go, are we perhaps maybe elevating, an emotion too high here? Are we, I honestly think it would be a good resource for a pastor. I really do.
I would also love if there are women in the audience that do read this book to kind of hear some feedback from women. I have a feeling they'd really like it, and it'd be really cool to hear women. Do you want to say something?
I was just going to say, I know one who has started reading it and she's currently quite enjoying it. So
good.
She likewise thought she was going to hate it because she was like, she felt a bit called out by it because like she's like, well, I'm quite empathetic.
Right.
But I was like, he's not really talking about empathy in that manner though. But so read it for yourself. But yeah, any ladies out there, like any of the gents watching, and you're married, give it to your wife as a gift. Let her read it.
Yeah. I'd like to lend it to people and kind of get their thoughts on it. I have a feeling most people will find it to be very balanced. Actually, I feel like Rigney, he really, like, what I think of who he's writing to. He's provocative, but I think he's provocative toward the right people. and
Yeah.
in the right way. He's not just trying to provoke everybody and just ruffle feathers or just try to draw attention to make a big splash and try to get people to buy his book. He's
Yep.
hitting really on an issue that I think he deeply believes the church has really been impacted by negatively. And he's actually speaking a lot to, especially like you said, church leaders. I really think he is. And
Yeah.
they're the ones very responsible for how people deal with issues and how they think about issues. And I can think of a lot of pastors, and honestly, I include myself. Like it's hard to stay balanced
Oh
because
yeah.
you even have other Christian leaders and people writing books that are hitting so much on compassion and empathy that you may not realize, oh wow, maybe we are getting skewed in how we're approaching these things. So I really
Yeah.
think that Rigney, um, he is being provocative, but I think in a necessary way, not in an unnecessary way.
Yeah. No, I agree. I would honestly, as I say, my final thoughts on it is just I think we've said everything we can without
Yeah.
like practically reading the
Right.
book out for people.
Yeah.
Um, so I would honestly say don't let her review be your final stop. Pick the book up and read it. It honestly is worth it. And if you have got Kindle Unlimited, it's still free. So go ahead and
Nice.
pick it up and enjoy it.
Yeah, and again next week we are going to be having
If he's still
another.
here.
Yeah. Well, you mean if he's still
Oh no,
has
I
a,
mean if he's still in the
oh,
chat
he
right
might
now.
be in the chat. Yeah, true. He
I
did
think he is,
comment.
yeah.
Yeah. But Colton, yeah, he's been in the chat some there, and yeah, if we haven't scared him away, like
He'll be there.
he's
Oh, he's still there.
yeah, he asked if we're going to be yeah, he goes, I'll just put that coming up now, Colton. Am I going to get canceled when I join next week? Yeah, he's having to think about that now.
I don't know, maybe
Well,
he'll get us cancelled, who knows?
that's true. Yeah. Yeah. We haven't even nailed down a topic yet, but Colton has a great YouTube channel, has a lot
Yep.
of overlap in interests with the things that we're talking about. And
Hmm.
I
He's
believe,
a pastor as well.
yeah, he's a pastor. So he's going to just, I'm sure, have a lot of great insights and things for us to chat about. And of course,
Hmm.
controversy. We're going to, of course, bring up controversy. That's what we do.
Yep. Plus, who knows what drama will have emerged next week on X, so we'll probably have that to talk about as well. And Colton's now quite active on X as well, so he'll probably be able to chime in a good bit with that as well. So
Yeah, and if you're watching this and you have any topics that you
or
think,
guest.
yeah, or guests that you think that we should have on our show, yeah, let us know either in the live chat when we're doing the show, or
Hmm.
you can always leave a comment on the video when it's up on social media. You could just put a
Hmm.
comment, or email at afreshperspective@gmail.com.
Yep.
Yep.
And if any of you are really creative and a brainwave strikes you for a name of the show, please also send that.
Yeah, because the ideas we've come up with so far are fine, but nothing that's been like, wow, perfect.
Yeah.
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 So, all right. Well, as usual, like this is the highest number we've had watching. It's getting higher actually as I'm talking. Guys, we're trying to wrap up the show. Stop watching.
No, don't stop watching. Restart.
Yeah, that's true. Restart the program when we're done here and watch what we talked about. But yeah, it's been awesome. We started off giving a quiz on New York sites to see if Nicholas could pick them out. He did a good job. He knows what the
I
Statue
got
of
one
Liberty
right.
is. 1 out of 2.
Vincent came into the other one, so
That's right.
the only thing that threw me off about the second building, I was thinking to myself, like what's a big building in New York? And I was like, Empire State Building. Like that is New York, isn't it?
Yes, yes, and the
Yeah.
Empire State Building was a good guess, but the building I showed you is a lot newer. So next week, maybe what you can do is send me some pictures. Don't give me captions. Send me some pictures of iconic Irish spots, and see if Colton and I can correctly name them.
Okay,
You can
that'll
get me
do.
back. Yeah. And
Or,
everybody.
or what I could also do is I could give you guys Irish words and have you A, try to pronounce them,
Oh,
and B, try and tell me what they are.
that's impossible, especially pronouncing. Like,
Well, what I'll do is I'll go easy on you. I'll give you Irish names and see how you pronounce them.
I know what those I've seen, like there's like famous actors and actresses that have those names, and it's
No,
like,
their names are fairly more common. We've got other names over here that would trip up even Irish speakers.
oh, I can imagine. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh man. Okay, so next week, if you want to watch Colton and I try to pronounce and discern Irish names, we're gonna do our best next week, starting off the show.
Yeah. Now
And
I see.
it's gonna be on Wednesday, April
Yep.
9th. That's the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Usual
And
time 4 p.m. Eastern.
4 p.m. Eastern time is the plan, and 9 p.m. And
Yep.
I apologize that week to week, it's just my life sometimes is hard to predict. Yeah.
Well,
So next week, that's the plan, is April 9th, Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern time. And then wherever else you live, you just have to calculate from there. Like Nicholas, now it's getting like midnight or something where you are. Not
no. It's
quite. No,
only
it's
10 to
only
11.
11. It's only
10
11.
to 11. Yeah.
Early. Yeah.
Early. Well, very early for me. So now I see. Before we go here, Alexander says thanks for the talk.
Aw.
And then
Thank you,
Colton's
Alexander.
actually he has said a very famous Northern Irish phrase.
Yeah.
No,
Oh, that's not
I
it.
know what he means here. His
Oh, that
spelling's
is
not
it.
quite on. That is it. Yeah, his spelling's not quite on here. But Tim, what do you think he's trying to say there?
Hi. It's maybe how about you? How is it?
Yes, correct. So it's not so much an
I know from
Irish. It's
talking
more.
to you.
Yeah,
I could just
it's
hear
more.
Nicholas in my head saying something like that.
So it's more of a Northern Irish phrase. It would be very common around Belfast. So I'm actually interested. Colton, don't tell me in the chat. Tell me next week whenever we're on talking. But tell me how you know about this. But in Belfast, if you were walking down the street and someone knows you, it would be very common for someone to say, "How about you, big lad?" Now it doesn't matter whether you're wee, small, fat, skinny. You will get "How about you, big lad?"
How about you, big lad?
So
So next week will be Irish, Northern Ireland, and New Hampshire is where I am. New England and Texan. We got Colton from Texas. So
sounds good.
you know the greeting for that, right, Nicholas? What you got to say when you see someone from Texas?
Howdy, I'm guessing.
Yeah, howdy.
Yeah.
I think that works. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
all
Why is
right.
there another one?
No, I think howdy is that's what I think of. Yeah. New
Fair,
England,
fair.
I don't think we have any kind of a special greeting. Actually, New Englanders try not to greet people as much as possible. Like unless they know you. But generally,
We
it's like
see.
we kind of stay to
Do you want to
ourselves.
know what's really, really funny about that? And what we'll end here, because I know we're about to hit the 2 hour mark.
Nobody's leaving though. Everybody's just
No, I know.
watching
Well,
us.
that's the good thing. As long as they're entertained, I think Tim and I could chat for hours sometimes. But
Yes, we do.
so you say that then about New Englanders. The funny thing is, the English are actually known for they will not greet each other. Like they're
Well,
very.
remember I showed you the video of it was like a parody video where they had someone
Yep.
from the north come down to London, and
Yep.
everybody was like, what do we do? This person keeps greeting us.
Oh, it's a no go. Like if you're in London, like even stopping to ask someone, do you have the time? Do you know where such and such? Like you will get grunted at as people like sprint past you. Like it's just don't speak to me. Don't.
You seem like
London's a nightmare.
it seems like based on you, like very friendly where you live.
The Irish love to talk.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
awesome. They're
No, it
known
doesn't
for
mean you
that.
won't get the odd grumpy Irish lad, but like, yeah,
Yeah. They like to talk and they like to write stories and make music. That's what
and
I've learned
fight.
today. And fight. Oh, that's right.
And
Yeah.
fight.
And then they can tell stories about their fighting and write music
Yeah.
about it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're gonna let you go. Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
watching.
much for hanging out with us and listening to the rest of our review. And next week we'll have Colton Yarbrough, YouTuber, pastor. I think does he do music too? I believe.
Yeah, he's very talented. Actually, I forgot to say
Yeah,
that. I've
yeah. So he'll be on next week, and we're gonna talk about all kinds of. I don't know exactly what, but it's gonna be fun. So we'll see you next Wednesday.
Surprise
Bye,
topics.
everybody.